Hey guys, Scott Short here at Empire Home Loan Corporation. My MLS number is 225-998. My California DRE number is 01074493. Thank you, sir. Go.
I'm Keith Dunnagan, managing attorney for BPE Law. It is good to be with you, Mr. Short. And you're starting to get a little slow on those numbers.
The DRE number is long. It was like, oh my God, I've not used that thing in ever. So that's
Yep.
like getting back new again. But that number is, yeah, that number's out there.
Yep.
So today's conversation is not a great conversation, but it's something's happening because 2020, 2021 were very interesting times for all of us, especially in the real estate community. And there is some blowback for some of the transactions that have happened in 2020, 2021 due to the way the market was telling people how to make offers and do stuff. So, Mr. Keith, have you seen anything yet, or what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you thinking?
So we're beginning to see. I mean, if we let's rewind. Let's talk a little bit about 2020 and 2021. COVID's in the thick of things. Lots of restrictions on the way we do business, and so we begin to get creative in how we respond. So, a lot of it was no house showings. It was virtual house showings, things of that nature. Then market accelerates.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous acceleration and appreciation in the market. Not a lot of homes on the market. Lots and lots of buyers as remote work became this in vogue thing. And tons of competition. I mean, how many of you want to go back to the days where, you'd put the house on the market and in 5 hours you'd have 10 offers, 7 would be over list, and that puppy is done, sold, and papered in 2 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those were good times. Were they? Good times for commission checks, bad times for liability.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we saw is in that hyper competitive market, in order for people to try to take advantage and get into contract, you begin to see buyers waive almost every protection that they had. They would waive every contingency, and the only time a contingency would survive is if they were doing FHA financing, and they were required to have things like a pest inspection, and they were required to do a couple of these things. But the sellers are looking at this and going, FHA. Now they would never say this out loud, and they'll never admit to it, because if they did, it's a FIHA and a HUD violation. Mm-hmm. But if you get 7 offers, all of them over list, mm-hmm. and you have a choice between institutional financing and FHA financing, you're going to go institutional all day long. Mm-hmm. And that's just the reality. If all things are equal, everything's the same, the terms are identical. If the choice is between conventional and FHA, you're going conventional because it's just less onerous on everybody. So what we saw in that market, in order for people to get into contract and to buy homes, they were waiving everything. They're waiving inspections, they're waiving contingencies, anything and everything that they could waive outside of their loan and contingency, they were waiving. Well, it seemed like a good idea then, but good ideas are always punished. There's that old colloquialism, no good deed goes unpunished, except the punishment always happens after the deed. It never happens before the deed or after the deed. And so, yeah, you're starting to see the precursors of all of this stuff happening. People are racing to get into homes, doing whatever they can to be hyper competitive. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, us in the real estate community, we do our best, but we recognize that the market is a certain way. And so we understand and have that knowledge of how the market's going. And so we're helping our clients navigate. But the biggest problem that we have is not a lot of us do a good job of making sure that say, hey, look, yeah, I know that you want to buy this house. I know that it's probably going to require you to waive your contingencies and do this stuff. You're going to put your initial deposit at risk within 3 days. You need to be thinking about, even if that deposit's at risk because you don't have a contingency, your closing period is still 30 or 45 days. You still need to be doing your due diligence. you still need to be doing your home inspections. You still need to be doing your pest reports. You still need to be doing all that. And a lot of people seem to have taken I'm not doing contingencies, I'm waiving all that as well, if we don't have it as a contingency, why are we doing it?
Right.
Why are we spending $450 or $500 on a home inspection? Why are we spending $300, $350, $400 on a pest report? Why are we spending this money? We'll just figure it out when we own the home. Except that's a terrible way to do business, because what happens is they find out more when they own the home than they would have ever found out had they just gotten those reports. Because let's be honest, how many of those reports come back and are completely accurate? They're surface level reports. They're designed to find out what you can see on the outside, because that will lead you to a conclusion or a further investigation on something on the inside. But when you've never done that surface level, people don't just go out and change a couple of light bulbs and then go, oh man, I've got mold, I got all sorts of water damage. That's not what happens. What happens is the first rainstorm comes, the window leaks, and they go, man, this house leaks. And then they begin to repair that leak, and they find a whole bunch of other damage, dry rot, mold, and now what should have been something that could have been caught, because the leak, inspectors can look for indications of leaks and note that. Now that you know that indication exists, that would put you on notice. And 2079.5 of the California Civil Code says buyer has an obligation to do their own due diligence. And if they don't do their own due diligence, they waive claims. I'm going to come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
But they're waiving claims as to the seller on a non-disclosure. They were identified. They knew. Because they knew and they didn't investigate further, that's not the seller's fault. So the fundamental problem we run into, and the claims were beginning to slowly percolate. People are buying these houses without doing their inspections, waiving all their contingencies. And now they're coming back and saying, you real estate professional, you were my fiduciary. You had an obligation to look out for my best interests. And you didn't warn me of the risk of waiving all my contingencies and not doing this stuff. As a result, I'm now suffering all these consequences that I would not have suffered had I known. So I'm going to sue you for breach of fiduciary duty because you didn't provide this information to me. And now that gets you drawn into this lawsuit that just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs. And it's because what we're thinking about is going, yeah, we understand the risk. But just because we understand the risk, did we articulate the risk? And here's something to think about that makes this interesting. The recent RPA went under a major adjustment, right? Massive amounts of changes. They moved paragraphs around. They put this fancy table in. But they put this out in December of 2021. But the most important change that they put in that contract, as far as I'm concerned, is there's a line in the contract that says that if the buyer elects to proceed with purchasing the house without doing inspections and things of that nature, that's against the agent's advice. But here's the problem. That line didn't exist in the contract before the December 21 revision. And most of the cases and most of the transactions we're talking about happened between March of 2020 and November of 21. And that's your risk.
So question for you. So you mentioned one thing that I want to kind of drill down a little bit. We have about 5 minutes left for my Zoom cuts out. So damn, cheat me. So if the seller has non-disclosure of material fact, how does that play in this conversation?
It just gives you two pots. It's giving you two pots. So the seller does a non-disclosure violation. They failed to tell you about the leaky window that's been leaking for 10 years,
Mhm.
and they never do it. Well, that's a non-disclosure complaint against seller. You, the buyer, is going to go, well, yeah, that's one, but you, agent, also didn't tell me to get my home inspector to take a look at this. You said in order for me to buy the property. I mean, I've actually heard agents say this, and dealing at some of the convention, agents would say, hey, if you want to buy this house, you're gonna have to waive your contingencies. You're gonna have to waive inspections. The market's hyper competitive. The only way you have a chance of getting into contract is by waiving that stuff. That may be true. That may, in 2020 and 21, you and I were around. We saw this stuff going on.
Yep.
We were having these conversations, and that might have been true. It very likely was true. But what should have happened is, even though you're going to likely be required to waive this stuff, you still need to do it. You still need to do inspections. By not completing your inspections, you put yourself at risk of buying something that you may not otherwise buy. And we have to look at the relative harm. You're talking about a $5,000 deposit, escrow deposit, that you may lose when doing the inspection may reveal a $100,000 repair. Your choice. If your choice is a $100,000 repair or losing a $5,000 escrow deposit, I pretty much think I can guarantee the answer on what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Now, the worst problem is this conversation also is that piece. Then if you paid 20, 30, 100,000 over and above, the market value, and you find this stuff here, they got some hot people. And, it's sad that, people who jumped into this conversation knew how the market was going. They knew all this stuff here, it's happening. So the sad part is they always look for somebody else to be the bad guy.
And so what happens in cases is the buyer sues the seller for non-disclosure. The buyer sues the agent for breach of fiduciary duty. The seller sues the agent for common law indemnity. The theory being, if you would have just told them what to do like you were supposed to, then none of us would be sitting here. The seller or the agent then sues the seller for common law indemnity, going, if you would have just disclosed the problem you would have known, then we wouldn't be sitting here. You don't know who doesn't have to prove anything to win? The buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the seller and the agent are fighting against each other, pointing the finger at each other. You've just told the court or the trier of fact, yep, something bad was done. You need to determine which one of us was worse.
Yep. Woo. So from your legal standpoint is, I know this stuff's going to start happening wherever. From an agent standpoint, if they have this pop up, this mail come to them, what should they have ready if they come to see you to represent them? What do they need to have?
Have that transaction file, and in that transaction file, have your communications. DRE requires you to keep records, requires the broker to keep records. DRE requires transactional documents and emails. What they don't require is cell phone text messages.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest, Scott. What, 80% of the communication in the real estate community is done at 120 characters or less?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Save your text messages. I'm one of these terrible guys. I can pull every single one of my text messages if I wanted to. If I wanted to work hard, I can pull every single message I've ever sent or ever received for the last 10 years. Because I get rid of a phone. Got them all.
So as an attorney, you got the power. I got you. So that's a warning to our people. Yeah. That's what I said. We got 1 minute. We got 1 minute left. So my Zoom's cutting down here in about a minute. So how do people get a hold of you, my brother? Because I appreciate what you're doing here. You're phenomenal. How do we get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me, go on the website, www.bpelaw.com. Tons of information there. Phone numbers for all of our offices. The fastest phone number to get a hold of us, 916-966-2260. Gets you to our California office, and California office can connect to every office that we have.
Cool. So I appreciate it. Sorry about that. I got 1 minute left. We'll talk later about why this thing's driving me batty. But hey, Thank you, sir. I appreciate your phenomenal resource. People, please reach out to Keith. He understands real estate law like nobody better. I mean, he came from a long line of real estate attorney people. So he also understands the collection department too. So he's got deep knowledge, deep knowledge. So I appreciate it.
We don't consumer collections anymore.
No more, but he understands the rule.
The rules.
All right, brother. I appreciate it. Let me jump before they cut me off. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate. Bye, guys.